I think we just need to stop complaining as an e-com industry and just realize that we were playing on easy mode. And now we just need to learn the foundation of the business and make sure we're doing it right.
Hi, Jess. Happy Friday. Very excited to have you on Bite Sized and learn about your journey and what you're currently doing at Longplay. And you also have a SaaS company as well, right?
Yes,
Backbone.
our SaaS company is called Backbone. And thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be on.
No, of course. I'm very excited. And we were just talking before how you're based in Toronto and it's freezing cold up there at the moment.
Today is the coldest I've ever experienced in a hot minute. I usually try to get out for the winter. So I usually escape Toronto for the winter, but this winter I'm staying. So I'm readjusting to Toronto life.
Well, good luck with that. Stay warm, stay safe. I've been following you for a while now on Twitter, and really what sparks me wanting to get you on Bite Size and kind of talk with you today is just, all your insights around entrepreneurship and retention marketing and the cool things you're doing in the space. But for anyone who doesn't know, Jess, and what you're up to, why don't you give us, first and foremost, your kind of 5-minute career story, what got you started and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, quick 5-minute career story. So my background was actually in actuarial economics, so very nerdy math type stuff. Decided that wasn't really the right path for me. So in my last year of college, I ended up joining up as a marketing assistant for an e-commerce company called Best Self Co. When I graduated, I actually became the chief marketing officer. And I remember thinking this is the world's most unqualified promotion of all time, but we're going to figure it out. And I was there for 3.5 years, leading their marketing. Amazing company, really scrappy team. And that was kind of the 2016 to 2019 kind of era, which was such a great period in e-commerce to really just test things, launch things, kind of get your hands dirty. So did that for 3.5 years. I ended up leaving to start Longplay. And at the time with Longplay, I'd really wanted to focus specifically on email and SMS. And, these days there's a lot of email and SMS agencies out there. But at that time, as a brand, there really was just, your options were an Upwork freelancer. You had the bigger acquisition companies who full service marketing agencies that had email and SMS as kind of a line item. And then, there's a handful of people who are doing specifically email and SMS. So that was kind of the space industry e-com was at when I started Longplay. So obviously over the last few years, email and SMS are still our bread and butter. But in the last 18 months to 24 months, we kind of realized e-com as an industry is starting to mature, and there really is a need to have subject matter expertise specifically around retention marketing, and that goes beyond just email and SMS. So Longplay now kind of really focuses on everything to do with how to keep your customer, how to increase customer lifetime value, and how to build a retention ecosystem that integrates all the different channels, tools, programs that a brand might need. Everything from direct mail to post-purchase upsells to subscription to loyalty programs, membership programs. Every brand is a little bit different. So that's kind of what we specialize in now. So Longplay's been around for, just under 5 years now. We have a team about 25 to 30-ish, fully remote. We really play in the D2C e-com space mostly. And then we recently launched Backbone, kind of beta launched last year as our email strategy automation tool. And that's going to have a little bit bigger of a focus of mine this year as well.
Very exciting. Congrats on everything.
I think that was 5 minutes. Hopefully that was a good spiel.
No, it was perfect. And yeah, congrats on what you've been building. And that sounds exciting on the automation tool. We'll dive into that more later on for sure. But from your background, you've been brand side, SaaS side, service side. Do you have a preference? And I think I saw you post recently about the grass being greener. I think
Yeah, it's funny. I literally just read about that recently.
Yeah.
So it's funny because in my journey, I started off brand side first, and I love consumer marketing. I think that's what I'm actually naturally good at. And then when you're good at it, you start building an agency and you start offering those services. And then you kind of realize to grow an agency, it's all B2B marketing. And that's a completely different approach where, the sales process is different, the marketing is different. And then kind of went through the usual agency owner process where you you get burnt out. You're like, oh, I hate everything. I'm exhausted by this thing. I went through a phase of long play where I was like, this company is killing me. Like, I just get rid of this thing, like burn it to the ground. And the team was amazing. Clients were amazing. Everyone was happy. It was just taking so much out of me. So I went through that process and then brought on my COO, Rachel, who has been fantastic. And it's funny because in the breathing room, that's kind of where Backbone and the software company came from. And we launched it from this place of like, hey, I'm burnt out of the agency. We're going to do the software thing. And it was actually in the process of launching the software, trying to grow that, I kind of like fell in love with the agency again. And not from like the agency is any easier, but there was more of like an appreciation for the service model where there's no cost up front. You have such great cash flow. And the biggest thing with the agency model that I didn't appreciate when I first started it was you get to iterate on like the quote unquote product, like the offering, while getting people for that, right? It's like you can be on a sales call, and as long as what the person is asking for is like 50 to 60% within like your scope of services, you can kind of say yes to that and then like tweak the team to deliver on that. Whereas with a software company, it's like you can't say on a software sales call that your product can do something it doesn't, unless you're going to go pay for a dev to build it right away. And then for a CPG, like a physical product, like if you have 10,000 units of a supplement, like that 10,000 units of a supplement is not going to change its form until you sell its 10,000 units. So I think that a deeper understanding of how does your approach to business need to change depending on how quote unquote malleable the offering is, and launching an agency is wildly different than launching a CPG brand just because you can iterate the offering as you go in a way physical product. So I think long story short is like I really have appreciation for all the models. I think agency is like it's such an easier place to play in, but it's harder to scale. You have a lot more team things. Software is there's so much upside, like everyone says, but the 0 to 1 million is way harder on software than it is for an agency. And then I think on my tweet, I was posting all these like pros and cons of like all these different companies, and someone's like, "Where are all the pros for brand side, like consumer goods?" And I was like, I'm like, it's expensive, it's hard, it doesn't change, it's not scalable. I think brand is just like way more fun. And I think the funness I'm like, that might be the most important thing in a business, because if you have fun building the business, like your ability to stick through to success and your enjoyment of the process is going to be so much higher. So I think e-com is still like the most fun to run, but from a business model standpoint, it's definitely way more like obstacles.
That's a really great breakdown. I love the way that you broke that down. And I kind of agree with you, having had my hands in all three myself. You mentioned myself being an agency founder. You mentioned kind of the burnout from the agency model, even though you have a great team and great clients. Not to labor too much on that point, because you kind of came back and maybe it was just a time in your life, but what led to that?
Yeah, I think with the agency life, I think this is the emotional journey that every entrepreneur goes through. Like I think SaaS founders probably feel it, e-com owners probably feel it, but I think agency is probably the most acute. And I kind of say like jokingly, like an agency is emotional labor, and it's the most emotionally labor intensive industry or type of business you can build, because it's all relationships with clients, it's all relationships with teams, like partnerships, in a way that there's no like product or like thing to like kind of push it to, right? So you're doing a lot of heavy lifting emotionally. So I think that's probably like my hypothesis on like why agency owners feel it the most. But building the agency, I think one of the things that made me able to grow so quickly was I fundamentally was like a people pleaser, and I really care about making sure everyone is happy, which is fantastic. Getting it to 7 figures very quickly, and very quickly that's going to burn out, because there's only so much you can keep people happy at scale. So I think that was a lot of the emotional burnout. Is like we had a team of, at that point, like 15 people. I was like a first-time founder. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing management-wise. We had a team, and then we probably had like 20 to 25 clients at the time. So, and then you have like your clients' team members. So at that point, it's like you're single-handedly trying to keep like 40 people happy, and just emotional exhaustion of that. Like, and then there's always going to be a fire. There's always going to be something wrong at that scale. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, and I think I couldn't hold those problems myself personally. And the process of getting out of that really is, I think, having to like break up with the business in a sense of disentangling my identity with the business's identity. Because I think early stage, it's, if a client's unhappy, I suck as a person. Oh my God, I'm failing and everything's going down. versus no, like, no, you have a business problem. The client is unhappy or your team member resigned. These are business problems that we associate emotional weight to. And so as a form of identity. So I think really disentangling, like taking a step back of like, okay, long play is long play. I am me. I am running this company as like its founder, CEO. Long play can be having a bunch of problems, and those problems will be fixed and are very important. But I, as a human being, am still me regardless. And yeah, really just not associating as much of the business problems with like a sense of identity or failure, I think was the biggest shift. Really looking at my business as like a 9-to-5 job. Not that I was running it like a 9-to-5 job, but like psychologically, like, no, that's my job. Like that's my career. And then I am here separately.
Yeah, I think I resonate with that heavily. And I think every founder resonates with it heavily. I kind of think there is a lot of that type of advice out there of how you are not your business. I also think it's one of the things that founders just probably have to go through. No amount of advice can get you from that point of being so emotionally involved, and every success you feel good in your life, and every failure or, difficult situation, it kind of pulls you in. I think it's really good for people to hear that, who are maybe in that stage of their business, or just to be aware of that and that it's okay and that you'll probably go through that. And as long as you keep doing the things, you'll come out the other side and naturally get to that place where you realize, actually, me being so emotionally evolved and having it impact my personal life isn't helping me make the right decisions in the business to solve the problems that maybe are occurring.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're spot on where you kind of almost need to earn the right to separate yourself from the business, because if you feel that from day one, then you're going to be a freelancer that's like detached from the thing. Like you kind of need a little, like there's a little bit of psycho needed to scale a business. And I'm always the first one to say, like, entrepreneurs is just, there's something wrong with us in the most beautiful, amazing way, because there's no rational reason to put yourself through this. Like if we're really looking at for financial reasons, for security reasons, it's like entrepreneurship is the least secure. There's technically not much financial upside if you look at like the rate of success and how much you could probably earn with the same skill set and like a normal job. So I think like that first year, if I wasn't that emotionally attached, if I didn't care that much about making sure everyone was happy, I don't think we would scale to 7 figures within that first like year and a half. And then it was once we got to that point and it could be stable, then my identity being tied to it actually was slowing our growth, like you said, because now it's getting in the way of the team. It was getting in the way of like actually building something out scalable. So I think as with all things in life, it's one of those like there's different phases as the process of the entrepreneur journey.
No, I definitely agree. In that stage then, let's talk about kind of the burnout, the emotional side, going to 7 figures really quickly. And it sounds like, your journey was very similar to mine in like rapid growth. The evolution of building that agency in that company, what have been the key things that you would maybe want to pass on to others who are building an agency or building a company? Was it the key hire that really helped? Was it the key kind of B2B marketing that really helped? What were some of the key things that you did that have allowed you to build that business so successfully and so quickly?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think the first one, very basic problem is just like, or very basic advice is really just genuinely understand your client and find a very acute problem that needs to be solved that no one else can solve the same way. I think especially in e-commerce and like agency world these days, everyone's like, oh, it's so easy to get started. We've lost sight of the foundations of like business fundamentals, which is like business exists to have a problem, solve it, and get paid to solve it. And we kind of get caught up in all these like offerings and like positioning and marketing and all these things. So I think that's kind of like, the core of it, and not to lose sight of that as you scale, because it's so easy to like start adding on new services and think about like upselling and AOV and cross-selling. So I think that's kind of one of the core pieces to never forget. Operationally, bringing on a COO was life-changing. So Rachel, my CEO, is absolutely amazing. We kind of run off the EOS system, and that was really critical for me to get out of this burnout state, but also two is like me realizing like I'm really good at certain parts of the business. Like I'm great at vision, I'm great at strategy, I'm great at planning, I'm great at like building the machine, but I get extremely bored at running the machine and operating the machine. So the way we kind of work is, I'll build out the blueprint. It's super specific. Like, it's not like this pie in the sky vision. Like, it's very like down to the specs. It's very specific. Build it once. I'm like, I enjoy the building process. Here's how it's going to work. And I can hand it over and she can make it infinitely more profitable and efficient and make sure it works. And it's a collaboration. It's not just like I'm building something and passing it off to her, because she'll look at it and be like, yeah, that could probably be better if we design it this way. Like the same way that you would kind of, design a car, like a designer versus an engineer. So having like a CO and operations person running the machine, I think typically the person who is good at building the machine and envisioning the machine is not the one who wants to like run it, tweak it. Like, it's just two different like modes. So that was definitely a big like unlock in terms of freeing me up to even have the space to think about software, think about vision. So those are the big two.
Yeah, that makes total sense and aligned. I mentioned at the beginning of this, you popped onto my radar on X. We call it X now, not Twitter. But like, I call it Twitter and then in parentheses X, just so people know.
Yeah, but I haven't let go of Twitter. Like, X just sounds, I do the Twitter bracket X thing too.
Okay.
I let go of the Twitter.
We've rebranded his rebrand back to Twitter X. But it was really like seeing your Diary of an Entrepreneur series. And, it's so popular these days and I love it and I do it myself around building personal brands and building in public. Why do you do it? What's that process for you? Is it a cathartic way to channel your own thoughts into a public facing narrative, or do you just love being transparent about what you're building in your own journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it's funny because the Diary of an Entrepreneur series was such a like sobering reminder for me that doing the things that come naturally to you and are aligned is always the best strategy for success. Because out of everything that I've ever done in my entire career, the Diary of an Entrepreneur series, I put the least thought into. It was just like, look, I'm going to do this thing one day. I'm like, just going to start it. Like, wherever it goes, where it goes. There's no like master game plan. I didn't sit here and think about like, here's a content strategy. Here's how it fits into this overall like thing that we're doing. And here's our competitors. I'm just like, yep, just going to start writing this thing and like whatever happens, happens. And, I usually get a lot of questions. I'm like, oh, this is like a lot of commitment. Like, how much time does this take you? Like, I don't know how you find it. I'm like, this thing takes me like 5 to 10 minutes to do. At the end of the day, like, it's just straight up stream of consciousness. And sometimes if there's things that come up in the middle of the day, I'll like kind of like, start the tweet midway through, but it's very fluid. And that's just how my brain kind of operates. I think if I talk to any of my friends, like, people I talk to regularly, it's like, oh, it's written in my, like at dinner, I'd probably sound the same way. At like lunch, I'd probably sound the same way. I'm not like really thinking of like the right bullet points to communicate on social media. So I think for me, it's grown into this like genuinely like enjoyable, like I really look forward to writing about it. And it helps me, like, I'm like, oh, I wish I could look back on this version of a series from like when I started at Long Play, because there's so many things I look back, like I'll look back and like, oh, that was the good old days, or like it was so hard, and like there's so much uncertainty that like when you know how the story ends, and I'm like, oh, I wish if I knew when I first started Long Play where we'd be now, I would have enjoyed the process so much more, because so much of the problems and anxieties come up because we think we're going to fail. But if we know we're going to succeed, then we're like, oh, wow, drama, like that's fine. We'll work our way through it. So I think the diary for me is like kind of this, gives me in the like future me a little bit of perspective. But also right now it helps me, like the process of writing helps you like consolidate your thoughts and start forming like a philosophy and an approach to entrepreneurship. So that's been really helpful for me too.
I love the series. So your 5 minutes at dinner, I enjoy reading it, and I have the same thing. I wish I'd have, I kind of put a lot more effort into tracking my own journey, and yes, posting that publicly, but I really regret not doing that from day one of the agency. Because to your point, it's like you remember the times, but to have it documented would have been really nice to look back on and kind of think through. Because maybe you'll feel the same as me, but the things that felt hard back then compared to when you're scaled, it makes it look relatively easy. The only thing that was actually hard, like you said, was the anxiety of, is this all going to come crashing down at some point? That was actually an easier thing in hindsight to deal with than when you're a bit more of a machine and you're a bit bigger. And I think the challenges actually become maybe a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, it's funny you bring it up. I think you're spot on, where the problems actually get harder and the challenges only get bigger. But I think our experience of the problems get smaller. There's less weight to it. Like, it's like I remember the first like unhappy client, or like first like not even unhappy in this big way, just like, I don't know if I like this. It's like, oh my God, sky's falling down, and now it's like, this is like part of the process of like the editing. Now we have like systems and, let's get the feedback. Cool. Like, let's make the edits. It's all good. And now it's like the problems I'm solving for are like, okay, how do we scale a team? Like, okay, what happens? Like, how does our company break, like management wise, when we get to like 50 people? And like, what infrastructure do we need to put in now? Like, now we're doing like 3 to 5 year roadmaps, and problems are so much bigger, and also the scale is so much bigger. But at the same time, like the problems are way more fun to solve for. And also I think there's less weight to it in the sense where, again, like that separation of identity. It's like my entire ego and identity isn't going to come crumbling down now if we fail at 1 or 2 initiatives. And there's a lot more stability of like, I know our company is not going to go down in the next year. Like, if I stop thinking about it, like we'd probably start going to decline in like 2 years, but there's so much more of that cushion of like space to breathe, like there's a little more foundation versus I think early on there's that like every day is like a knife fight. Like every day you're in like survival mode. Yeah, for sure that the challenges only get harder. You never get to an easy mode, I think, with the business.
No, that's a good reminder for everybody. Switching lanes a little bit from kind of you as a founder and entrepreneurship into what you do as an actual business and retention marketing. And it's really interesting. You mentioned this at the beginning, and I have quite a few thoughts on this. There's email and SMS, there's retention marketing, there's lifecycle marketing. What is retention marketing?
I love that you brought up that way, because then I get to frame it. So all of them are kind of like subsets of each other. And the way we kind of look at it is retention marketing is anything to do with keeping your customer, and kind of by extension is increasing your customer lifetime value. So I think the umbrella of everything is increasing your customer lifetime value. And you can increase your customer lifetime value in a few different ways. So you can either keep them around for longer. So it's like, for example, if you can keep them around like active and engaged for like 3 years instead of 1 year, they're probably going to make more purchases. Second one is getting them to make more purchases within a short time period. And the third is increasing average order value. So there's really like only so many levers you can pull in terms of increasing customer lifetime value. And then retention marketing has everything to do with that. And then essentially our approach is we should be building a retention ecosystem, which is all the different channels, tools, and programs that work together with the goal of increasing your customer lifetime value. So email and SMS are specific channels for that, but email and SMS are not different from retention marketing. It's just a subset of it. In the same way that like paid media is a subset of like marketing in general, it's acquisition marketing. So that's kind of the way we see email and SMS. And then the question becomes like, oh, customer lifecycle, like where does this all fit in? It's like, oh, the customer lifecycle is the journey of a customer's lifetime value. It is a journey from when they learn about your brand for the first time to some point in the future when they're a raving fan, all the different steps that they have to go through to like consider their first purchase, make their first purchase, use their first product, post on social media, make their second product, disengage, come back, make a third purchase. That entire customer life cycle is the visual representation of your customer's lifetime value. And then we can back into, what are the best channels, tools, and programs and strategies to speak to them at each stage of their customer life cycle to keep them around for a little bit longer.
Love that. I like that explanation, and very, very aligned. It also plays a customer acquisition part though, right? Because you have leads that are coming in through subscribe, but they don't purchase. You have cart abandon of first purchase. So I don't want to get too complicated, because I think we all understand within this world of marketing that your explanation is pretty much spot on. There is a part though, yes, retention, but it's a big driver of acquisition when you think of how much of a role it plays in monetizing subscribers that haven't purchased and monetizing subscribers who have abandoned their cart.
Yeah, we literally have a little graph of like the marketing funnel, and like there's that section of the marketing funnel where acquisition and retention overlap, which is kind of like when they land on your website to like their first purchase is kind of when both styles of marketing are doing the same thing. And I think you also bring up this really important point, which is like the shift in the e-com world to understanding marketing and customer journey or customer lifecycle marketing in a more holistic way. So I think back before like COVID and back before like, iOS updates and Facebook updates and all that stuff, e-com was kind of on easy mode as an industry. And we could just be like, we're going to maximize Facebook ads. Okay, now we're going to maximize email. It was a very like channel specific thing. And because everything was measurable on e-com, we're going to perfectly splice all this data. So we know exactly what Facebook did. And we know exactly what email did. And we know exactly what TikTok did and like all this stuff. I think we've lost sight of like, hey, at the end of the day, we're marketing to consumers, which are humans, and humans are not linear in that way. Like if you think about how you shop, it's like, how do you learn about your brand? Like your friend talks about it, you Google it and they're like, yeah, maybe. And then you see it somewhere and then you're like looking at it again, you see on TikTok again, and then you go on their site and there's a whole buying process as like humans. It's not like I saw a Facebook ad, cool, I clicked. And then everything is perfectly attributable. So I think that's kind of where the ecosystem part comes in, which is like when you try too hard to maximize per channel, that's just not the way marketing works. And I think other industries besides e-com has naturally understood that because things weren't measurable. And e-com is kind of like over skewed to like attribution, like live or die by attribution. And if it can't be attributed, it's not working. And then we're losing out on so much growth because of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. From a customer acquisition standpoint and paid media, we talk so much about, and I must repeat this 1,000 times a week, creative being the variable, right? And we kind of know that. Paid media now, it's really capturing that attention, earning that click, right? That's one of the core variables or levers within customer acquisition. Obviously, there's lots that goes into it. What's the variable to retention marketing success?
I think the variable is understanding your customers' ongoing pain points. This is an interesting phrasing of the question. Never thought about this. So you're kind of just seeing me think out loud now.
Sorry, I said there'd be no curveball questions, but maybe this is the one.
Yeah, I mean, I love the curveball questions because there's something new can come out, right? I think where my head is going is kind of understanding deeply what the core pain point you're actually solving for your customers, mainly because the big mistake with retention marketing is people trying to be like, we're just going to maximize, like try to get these repeat purchases. But like the truth is sometimes someone needs to use your product and they don't need to use it again for 6 months. And then also sometimes the barrier that you run into with retention is like, there's nothing left to sell them. Like you need to solve a new pain point for them. And that's what a true cross-sell strategy is. It's like you understand at your core, it's like your customer is trying to lose weight. So it's like you can sell them a supplement, but also like what are peripheral things that help them with that need. And then also beyond losing, like maybe it's a body image issue, maybe it's whatever. So it's like, and that's what growth is, like that's the expansion plan. So I think with retention, it's like typically what we run into is you need to understand your customer life cycle and their journey of like, how do they know it's a pain point? What's their process towards solving it? What information and content can you give them in the meantime before they're ready to buy? After they bought your product, how can you still keep them engaged? Even if they're not ready to buy a physical product again, there still needs to be some way of keeping them engaged throughout the process and then giving them another product that's relevant. And it really is like that relationship with your customers. Like, how do you keep them engaged? Not in this like content clicky email clicks kind of way, but just like genuinely engage with your brand where they're coming back to you for a specific reason, even if there's no physical product for them to buy yet, but you're still their go-to for some problem.
What I love about the answer the most is, and again, this is something I talk about quite often, is you didn't answer it with, or you need this flow or this segmentation. You answered it with something that, and maybe this is being a bit harsh on marketers, but something I remind myself of, my teams of, is it's the psychology of a consumer. You have a platform like a Klaviyo or an Attentive or whatever you're using, doesn't matter to a degree. The tactics of how you set those things up need to be anchored in exactly how you started the answer to that question, which is the consumer, right? So understanding your consumer is less about the flows and automations that you can build out. It's actually thinking, well, what makes sense based on the brand, the products, their journeys, the consumer mindsets, what might elicit them to purchase more or more often, or this product versus this product. And that's far more about consumer psychology understanding than it is being tactically good within a platform.
Exactly. And I think you're spot on where people get so lost in the tactics. Because I think the tactics were enough. Like tactics and best practices were enough to scale an e-com brand, like 4 years ago. And now we're really challenged, I think, as an industry to get down to like understanding business fundamentals. And we forget that the tactics, like even like something like a win back flow, it's like it's best practice because you lose customers. And then you need to think about, why do you lose customers? Like, why are they disengaging from you in the first place? And all the tactics stem from some like underlying problem it was solving. But the tactics themselves, if you do it without understanding what's connected to, you're just launching a bunch of things. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of tactics that are changing now too. Like there's so many things our team is doing with clients these days where like, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense based off of like 2020 best practices. Like this is breaking every rule. And like my team is only finding them because they're doing so much consumer research. They're like, what if this is a problem? Like, what if we do it this way? And we're like, now we're making up all these new flows and campaign strategies like don't exist in any playbook, but it completely makes sense when they kind of back into, oh, this is the consumer. Like these are the options they're searching for. This is why they're getting stuck. Cool, let's try a campaign this way. Let's try a flow that way.
When you're talking to brands that are, looking for support around their retention marketing, maybe an obvious question because they're looking for more repeat customers, but what are the actual things they're struggling with? What do you see are the biggest gaps of the brands that you work with and have to kind of fix, or the brands that are discussing potentially working with you? What are the things they're missing the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the initiatives I was really focused on for our team last year was like really building out our offering so that we could help like 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure, and 9-figure and kind of like grow up with brands. So I'd say, like, to answer your question, it's kind of different at each stage. I'd say 6-figure brands actually over-engineer and overthink retention, because at that stage it is 90% of your attention, like your marketing effort, resources, time should be dedicated on acquisition. You have no one to retain. And so at that point, they're usually so caught up in like, I need the perfect welcome flow. Like, are we A/B testing? Are we segmenting? Like, is this on brand? It's like, yes, those things are important, but you have no customers to segment. You can't run any statistically significant A/B tests. Just get the freaking thing live. And so that's the biggest thing with 6-figure brands, like just get the basics live and just leave it for like 6 months and focus on acquisition is where it should be going. For 7-figure brands, usually it is, they typically don't have a full understanding of their customer mindset yet or why they're stuck. So like usually at 7 figures, it's like they kind of have all the basics live. They're running all the campaigns. Like 7 figures is when the tactics have gotten you this far. Now you need strategy. So like, yes, you're sending 2 to 3 campaigns a week. Yes, you've all your flows built out. Now you've plateaued at this stage. And the hardest thing with 7-figure brands is either they're scaling quickly and we can just dig into the customer base and like optimize, or if they're stuck at 7 figures for a long time, it's typically because you've maxed out the strategy. It's like you can only grow your business so far by running promotions once a month. You can only grow your business so much by like spamming your customers. And in order to break to the 8-figure range, you actually need to kind of walk back that strategy, which actually hurts your revenue in the short term, in order to build something, rebuild the foundations for the long term. So that's kind of the biggest step. The 7-figure range is definitely the toughest, especially if they've been 7 figures for like a few years. 8 figures is usually just customer segmentation and A/B testing. Like the 8 figures is like the teams are usually pretty sophisticated. They know what's wrong. They're just missing the bandwidth and the resources. And we always say like acquisition is like a fast-paced kind of game. Retention is like, it's all blood, sweat, and tears. Like, it's just do the work, and you need a freaking army to execute at this level. Just sheer workloads that takes. So it's all project management, it's all operations, it's all like customer segmentation, A/B testing, like all the granular stuff. And then at 9 figures, it's that shift to, you need to be building your retention ecosystem. Like, you need to be launching different channels. You need to be having all those things integrated together. Your channels, tools, and programs need to be all working together to move customers along each stage. And you can't scale to 9 figures without like with a channel specific thing. Like there's no A/B testing on email that is going to help a 9-figure brand because they already typically email figured out.
Go into a bit more depth. Actually, that's a really interesting take. So when you're talking about channel expansion and things like that, what do you mean by that for any 9-figure brands that are listening?
So we kind of look at the retention ecosystem as like all the combinations of like channels, tools, programs that a brand needs to keep their customers. So channels are like, email, SMS, like mobile app, direct mail, organic social. Those would all be channels. Tools would be, I kind of think of tools like the little mushroom boosters in Mario Kart, where it's like it can boost boost little areas of the customer journey. So like a post-purchase upsell is like boost your average order value a little bit, or like a quiz can like boost your like lead to or your traffic to like non-purchaser conversion, right? So those kind of little boosters, and those are just like small areas of the customer journey. And then third one is programs. So it's like a subscription program, loyalty referral membership programs, affiliate programs, and that's more integrated into the ecosystem. It's like your loyalty program or your membership program isn't going to like, it's a big lift to make sure it's like working all the way through. So those are the 3 elements of the ecosystem. And typically I'd say like the core ones are the email, SMS, direct mail is kind of picking up these days. Subscription and the membership programs are kind of picking up these days as well. Those purchase upsells, and then like P2P SMS outreach, I think is starting to come up as well as an option. So it's really, and then even like mobile apps, like certain types of brands make a lot of sense as well. So it's really about like understanding where your customers live, which but beyond email and SMS, what's the roadmap of like additional channels, tools, and programs that you should be launching, but also making sure they're integrated. It's like one of the mistakes that we see a lot of like 8-figure brands and 9-figure brands make is they're like, hey, we want to launch like a loyalty program or a membership program. And they're like, oh, we set up the platform. It's like linked on the footer of a website. It's super exciting for like a month and it's everywhere. And then it just kind of dies. And they're like, oh, this program isn't working. And the integration part is, hey, how are we leveraging email and SMS flows to drive awareness? How are we leveraging the loyalty program to drive more sales during promotions, like doing like 2x points? Hey, when there's a product launch, can we use the loyalty program to give people like early access? Like it needs to all be integrated together versus these like individual, like we're going to do a loyalty program and then we're going to run our promotion and then we're going to do an SMS blast. So that's kind of like how we think about building a retention ecosystem. And that's just like mission critical for the 9-figure stage.
Love that. Would you advise brands at 6 figures not to launch some of those initiatives and channels?
Yeah, I just do email, maybe some SMS, get the flows live, send the campaigns like once a week, twice a week max, and just focus on acquisition. It's like, because that is your 80-20 of work. Everything else is just busy work to me. It's like you need to acquire more customers. There's no one to retain. I think it's like very the basics of like, there's no one to retain. What are we doing retention marketing for?
Yeah, makes sense. What's been your take on, it comes back to tracking and everything. I'm not too sure what platforms you prefer to use within your agency. You have the big incumbents, the Klaviyo's and Attentive, and then everybody's trying to combine. So both do email, SMS, and they're trying to build these out into these one-stop shop ecosystems for kind of retention lifecycle marketing. What's your take on that? Do you think that works? Do you think that's critical for brands? Because I think, one of the things we do with clients is just education on just tech stack as well. What's the best places to be? What's the most effective and efficient way to build out your retention programs or whatever? What's your take on that? And what's been your take on the ecosystem shifts?
That's a good question. For us, we are pretty platform agnostic in the sense where, like, especially in this world that like everyone's an affiliate for something. So I feel like it's important to be transparent on this. Is like, hey, we just have partnerships with like all the big players in the spaces. Sometimes there's competitors, but let's just recommend the one that makes the most sense for that particular brand. It's really dependent per brand. I think like sometimes it makes sense for Klaviyo, like email and SMS, to just be like, be on one platform, especially like for smaller brands. It's like, you're paying for 2 different platforms. Now you have all these customer journeys that you can keep track of. Sometimes for bigger brands, like the little benefit of like an Attentive pop-up being a little bit better doesn't really make a difference when you're at 6 figures. But if that is like marginally better at 9 figures, that's actually like millions of dollars in revenue. So I think early on, it's like keep it consolidated. And then typically as we scale with 8 and 9-figure brands, it's like you start kind of branching out a little bit more because those incremental improvements from very specific platforms move the needle enough for it to be worth it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That's a great answer. I like that. Jess, I feel like I could talk nonstop. I say this to every guest, and we spoke about this beforehand. You said, how long do we normally record for? I'm like, well, it's bite-sized. It's meant to be snackable content, and we're recording for 50 minutes.
You have your like part 1, part 2 releases.
I think we'll have to. Yeah, we definitely will. But I'm gonna end on what are your big predictions or any hot takes that you have, if you do hot takes, for 2024?
Hot takes for 2024. I think e-com, I've been saying this since 2023, but I think e-com is maturing as an industry. And I think my hot take is we were just playing on, everyone's like, e-com's getting hard and then things are melting down, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, guys, I think we were just playing on easy mode. And now it's on like normal mode. It's not even on hard mode. It's on normal mode where we have to understand the foundations of our business. We have to have a good business model. We have to have like operational excellence. And I think a lot of brands that were built off of just doing marketing well are going to go down. Ones who like, there never was true product market fit. They never had a true customer base are going to go down. All those brands that are like built off of like drop shipping that they threw a Shopify store on, all that stuff I think it's going to go down, and you kind of see like the ones rise, but I think the industry will be better off for it as well. So I think my hot take is just like, I think we just need to stop complaining as an e-com industry and just realize that we were playing on easy mode, and now we just need to learn the foundation of the business and make sure we're doing it right.
Love that. Amazing. I like that. That's a good hot take. Jess, thank you so much for coming on. I've loved chatting with you and learning more about you and your story and your approaches to retention. Keep doing the Diary of an Entrepreneur. I'm an avid reader and yeah, just really appreciate your time. Thank you.
So much for having me. This was amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.